What's been happening to Nicholas Schreck since the last time we met?
Well, we're entering phase 2 of Radio Werewolf's operation for world dominion. And what we're waging is a cultural war right now on every front, in music, in literature, utilizing the media against itself. What we're trying to do is bring back a resurgence of the Western European tradition that has been all but lost in the world. And we're using music because that's the instrument that young people respond to right now. We're doing propaganda directly to awaken the wolf in man, because the wolf is a symbol of Western European power and fury, and that's why we use it in Radio Werewolf.
I understand you're talking about the evolution of this, that your music is getting more into the political...
Well, our music, well, I wouldn't say political, because we transcend politics. Politics is merely the puppet show of human beings, and we transcend that, but we are interested in the control of human beings for our own purposes.
You have a sense of...
Music of today is absolute swill. It's designed to keep young people passive, restrained, and it's designed to tame them. And the war that we are waging is a guerrilla war on the human mind. And we use musical frequencies, the dominant frequency, which I've referred to before, and symbolism and imagery to awaken dormant aspects of the human mind.
Isn't it different?
To what extent is water capable of picking up information? What does it perceive? And how does it remember it over time?
The Aerospace Institute in Stuttgart has discovered a relatively simple way of making the structure of a drop of water visible. The researchers have had their efforts rewarded by insights into a very beautiful world. Each drop has a face of its own, unmistakable and unique. Why are the individual drops so different from one another? We got a lot of people to come to a lecture hall here at the Institute, gave them all the same water, had them make drops at exactly the same time, collected all the drops, and then discovered that each individual produced different images from the same water. And here you can see the results. Here on the right you can see that the images of the individual students are different, but those made by a given student are all quite similar. This is the work of the first experimenter, this one here from the second, this from the third, and this from the fourth. Individually, they can quite easily be reproduced, but you would never have thought that they were all from the same water, because when you compare the images from the different people, you see some big differences. Then we undertook experiments to find out whether things changed when we put something into the water. A real flower was placed in the water. A while later, we took a drop of water, and here you can see one of the pictures. And you can see it in this picture. It's the typical image you get when you put a flower into water. You could recognize the flower in every single drop in this glass, of course. That can be reproduced and has significance. And if you were to put a different flower in here, for example, a Sweet William flower, then all the drops of this water would look like Sweet William. The statement that water has a memory practically changes our whole way of looking at the world, of course. Let's travel down the Rhine in the figurative sense. The water is flowing down the Rhine, picking up information everywhere it goes. So the water has more information at the mouth of the Rhine than it had at the source. And the Dutch, living at the mouth, when they drink that water, they're also drinking all that information. Thus, the world's oceans would no longer be something that separates us, but instead a giant storehouse of information, and the rain would perhaps be a data medium carrying information to the world.
Because energy changes with the emotions we give out. When we give out love, it's a certain wavelength. When we give out hate, it's a very different wavelength. And the friend of mine in Japan has become very well known for taking water, his name's Mr. Emoto, taking water, putting it in a container, and then he'll put words of love or hate or whatever on the side of it, because when you write a word, that word may seem in the decoded realm as a word you can see and read, but in the vibrational realm, it represents a vibration. If you could see the vibration of writing the word hate to writing the word love, it would be dramatic. In fact, you're looking at it. Because what happens is, after he's put the word on the side of the water, he then freezes the water really, really fast. I've seen his laboratory where he does it. And then he photographs the crystals. This is the crystal from a water that had love and appreciation written on it. This is the crystal that had hate written on the side of the water. And he's done whole books about this stuff with all these pictures in it.
to Monsieur Emoto. Mr. Emoto became terribly interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the four elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
Reality ultimately comes down to our
Have you ever thought about what thoughts are made of? Is there a substance of thought?
I guess it just depends on what you think is real. The world being possible timelines of reality. Until we choose.
Are all realities in the quantum field existing simultaneously?
An addiction is something real, something that you can't stop.
There literally are different worlds in which we live. There's the macroscopic world that we see. There's the world of our cells. There's the world of our atoms. There's the world of our nuclei. These are each totally different worlds. They have their own language. They have their own mathematics. They're not just smaller. Each is totally different. But they're complementary. Because I am my atoms, but I am also my cells. I'm also my macroscopic physiology. It's all true. They're just different levels of truth. The deepest level of truth uncovered by science and by philosophy is the fundamental truth of unity. At that deepest subnuclear level of our reality, you and I are literally one.
if we see that, not merely intellectually or verbally, but actually feel it, that we are the rest of humanity, then the responsibility becomes immense.
Yes, well, how can you do anything about that responsibility?
Then either contribute to the whole mess or keep out of it. That is, not to be at peace, to have order in oneself.
Well, I didn't.
I'll come to that. I'm going to talk.
Yes, you see, well, let's come, you see, I think we've touched on an important point, that we say the whole of humanity, of mankind, is one.
Yes.
And therefore to create division there is destructive.
Dangerous.
Yes. Now, whereas to create division between me and the table is not dangerous, because in some sense we are not one, though.
Me and the trees.
That's only in some very general sense that we are one. But
yes.
Now, mankind doesn't realize that it is all one. I think we have, you see.
Why?
Well,
Why?
let's go into that. You see, I think we've been going, that this is a crucial point, that it's clear it doesn't, because there's so many divisions, and not only in nations and religions, but from one person to another.
I know. Why is there this division?
There, first of all, is the feeling, at least in the modern era, that every human being is an individual. Right? This may not have been so strong in the past.
That's what I question. I question altogether whether we are individuals.
Yes, well, that's a big question, because...
Yeah, of course. We said just now, the consciousness, which is me, is similar to the rest of mankind. They all suffer.
Yes.
They all have fears. They're all insecure. They have their own particular gods and rituals, all put together by thought.
Yes, well, I think this calls for some, there are two questions here. One is, not everybody feels that he is similar. Most people feel they have some unique distinction. At least they...
What do you mean, unique distinction?
Well,
distinction in doing something?
Well, there may be many things. Like, for example, one nation may feel that it is able to do certain things better than another. One person has some special things he does, or qualities.
Of course. You are more intellectual than I am. You are somebody else better than this and that.
Yeah, he may take pride in his own special abilities or advantages.
But when you put away that, basically we are...
But now, yes, we have to say, what does it mean? That you're saying that these things you've just described, which are...
superficial.
Yes, now the things that are basic are what?
Is fear, sorrow, pain, anxiety, loneliness, and all the human travail.
Yes, well, many people might feel that the basic things are the highest achievements of man. The highest achievements of mankind, and not these.
What has he achieved?
Well, let's discuss it. You see that?
Yes, yes.
I mean, many people, at least I understand. We've discussed this often, but I think we must
yes, sir.
Bring it out.
Let's
now,
go. What have we achieved?
Well, for one thing, people may feel proud of the achievement of man in science and art and culture and technology.
Achieved in all those directions, certainly we have.
Yeah. Yes.
Vast technology, communication, travel, medicine, surgery.
Yes.
Has advanced tremendously.
Yes, I mean, it's really remarkable in many ways.
There's no question about it.
Yeah. Now, you're
what
saying that all...
have we psychologically achieved?
Yes, I mean, one point is to say none of this has affected us psychologically.
That's right.
Right. And the psychological question is more important than any of the others, because if the psychological question is not cleared up, the rest of it is dangerous.
Yes. They're quite right, dangerous. If we psychologically are limited, then whatever we do will be limited. And the technology will then be used by our limited...
Yes, the master is this limited psyche and not the rational structure of technology. And in fact, technology then becomes a dangerous instrument. Now, but the second point is, are we all one, really? You see, That is, even though we are all similar, that doesn't say we're all the same, right? We're all one.
No, we said in our consciousness, basically, we have the same ground on which we stand.
Yes. Well, that's, you see, from the fact, let's say, the human body is similar, it doesn't prove they're all the same.
Of course, right? Your body is different from mine.
Yes, we're in different places and different entities and so on. Now, but I think you're trying to say that the consciousness is not an entity which is individual.
That's right.
The body is an entity which has a certain individuality.
That's right. That all seems so
yeah, but
clear.
I think it may be clear, but I think...
your body
yeah.
is different from mine.
Yes.
I have a different name than you.
Yeah, well, we also have different, you know, though similar material, it's different. We can't exchange, you know, because the proteins in one body may not agree with those in the other. Now, many people feel that way about the mind, saying that there's a chemistry between people which may agree or disagree.
No, but actually go deeper into the question. Consciousness is shared by all human beings.
Yes.
That's my whole thought.
Yes. Now, the feeling is that the consciousness is individual and that it is communicated, as it were, that it is...
I think that's an illusion, because we are thinking of something that's not so.
Yes, well, and what do you want to say that there is one consciousness of mankind?
It's all one.
It's all one, and that's important, because whether it's many or one is a crucial question.
Yeah.
Now, it could be many which are then communicating and building up a larger unit. Or you're saying from the very beginning it's all one.
From the very beginning it's all one.
And the sense of separateness is an illusion, right?
And that's what I've said over and over again. That seems so logical saying. The other is insanity.
Scientific experiments that tell us beyond any doubt that our inner experience of belief changes our outer world. And I'll do them very quickly. These are 3 very fast experiments. The first experiment, number 1, was performed in Geneva, Switzerland, University of Geneva, July 25th, 1997. It was reported to over 3,400 journalists, educators, scientists, engineers in more than 40 countries. Very, very famous experiment. What did they do? They took a particle of light, a photon, 1 photon, and they wanted 2 identical photons. So they took 1 particle and cut it into 2. So now you have photon 1, photon 2. They put them into a special machine that could take the photons and separate them by 14 miles. 7 miles in one direction, 7 miles in the other direction. And once they were separate, they could begin the experiments. So here are the 2 photons. We're going to shoot them 14 miles apart. Here they go. Boom. Okay, now this particle is 14 miles from this particle. And what they found is this. Whatever they do to one particle here, the other particle acts like it is still connected even though it's 14 miles apart. The particle acts like it's still connected even though it's 14 miles apart. And the question that they're asking is why? If you take 2 particles and you separate them, why do they act like they are still connected? This is important for you and for me, because the phenomenon is called entanglement. Whoops. It's called entanglement. So that is the first experiment. The experiment, and all I'm asking that you remember from this experiment is simply this. Once particles are physically separated, even though they are no longer together physically, the energy is still connected. Does that make sense? Are you okay with that?
Okay, here's why this is important. This is why this is a very important experiment. Because scientists tell us if we could go back in time to the beginning of our entire universe, there was a time when everything was connected. That the universe today is many light years in diameter. But if you could take every one of those little particles of matter in the entire universe and bring them all back together, there's a time when everything was connected. These arrows, this is from the Hubble Space Telescope. It's believed to be the very center of the universe, the time that scientists call the Big Bang, when everything began. If we could go back to that time, if we could go back to the Big Bang, what would the universe look like? A long, long time ago, far, far away. What would the universe look like? Here, we'll see that again. A long time ago, far away. What would the universe look like? Right, and someone is saying it looks like a little ball. Right here. Can you see this right here? If you could go a long time ago, scientists tell us that the universe, the entire universe, if you could bring all of the matter together and take all the empty space out, that the entire universe would be about the size of a single green pea, and everything is connected. Now the scientists tell us that at this time everything was very compressed, and that the universe, the temperature was about 18 billion million degrees Fahrenheit. And I said, come on, scientists, how do you know that for sure? And they said, okay, we don't know that for sure, but it was hot. It was really, really hot. Okay? So we know a long time ago the universe was hot. And then it began to expand. It began to expand and continues to expand today. Here's the point. The point is, the experiment showed that once a particle is physically connected and then physically separated, the energy is still connected. That was the experiment. Scientists are now telling us the universe was once physically connected and is now separate, but energy is still connected. And that is the reason why you and me and everything is still connected. Does that make sense to you? Does that help to make sense? It makes sense to me. As a scientist, I need to understand this. The instant everything was connected, this is called the Big Bang singularity, is the term for this. So the question is, are we still connected? The answer is, you bet we are. We are very, very connected. That was the first experiment.
No, the whole point is, we have suffered from, I don't know, from the beginning of time. We have suffered. And we haven't solved it.
No, that's clear. It hasn't been solved. We haven't solved it. But see, I think you've said something. The thing you've said, which is that the reason we haven't solved it is because we are treating it as personal or as a small group where it cannot. That's an illusion. Now, any attempt to deal with an illusion cannot solve anything. Now, we would like to make it very clear.
Thought cannot solve anything.
Well, yes, because
psychologically.
The thought, you can say that the thought itself divides. Let's say, put it, thought is limited. It is not able to see that this suffering is all one, right?
Yes,
and therefore it divides it up, right?
That's
It's mine and yours and theirs. And that creates illusion, which only multiplies suffering. Now, it seems to me that that the statement that suffering of mankind is one is inseparable from the statement the consciousness of mankind is one, right?
We said that.
Yes.
Suffering is part of our consciousness.
Yes. But one doesn't get the feeling immediately that this suffering belongs to the whole of mankind, you see.
So, the world is me, I am the world.
Yes, you've often said that.
Yeah. But we have divided as British Earth and French Earth.
Now, do you mean by the world the physical world or the world of society? Or
the world of society, world of psychological world, chiefly.
Yes, so we say the world of society, of human beings, is one. And I am, now when I say I am that world, what does that mean?
The world is no different from me.
The world and I are one?
Yes.
Right, we are inseparable.
Yes. And that requires, that's real meditation, that's real, you must feel this in not just verbal statement, it is an actuality. I am my brother's keeper.
Yes, now many religions have said that.
And they're just verbal statements.
Well,
and they don't keep it. They don't do it in their heart.
Well, perhaps some may have done it, but in general it's not being done, right? I mean, there may have been a few, right?
But that's not, we human beings haven't done it. Our religions actually have prevented it.
Well, because of division. Every religion has its own beliefs and its own organization.
Its own gods and its own saviors.
Yes.
So, from that, is that intelligence actual?
Yes.
Or is it some kind of fanciful projection, hoping that will solve our problems? No, it's not to me. It is an actuality. Because the ending of suffering means love.
Yes, now, before we go on that, you see, we have to make clear up a point about me. You see, you said it's not to me. Now, in some sense, it seems that you are still defining an individual.
Yes, yes.
Is that right?
When I say I'm really not, I'm using the word I as a means of communication. It's not.
Yeah, but what does it mean? You see, are you, in some way, let's say that there may be two people, we'll say A, who is the way you say, and B, who is not, right?
Yes.
Now, so A says it's not, that seems to create a division between A and B.
That's right. But B creates the division.
Yes.
So what is the relationship between the two?
Yes. You see, B is creating... Yes, well, B is creating the division by saying I am a separate person, but it may confuse B further when A says it's not that way to me, right?
Yes. So that's the whole point, isn't it, in relationship. You feel that you're not separate.
Yes.
And that you really have this sense of love and compassion. And I haven't got it. I haven't even perceived or gone into this question. What's your relationship to me?
Yes, well...
Yes, what I'm saying. Your relationship, you have a relationship with me, but I haven't any relationship with you.
Well, yes, I think one could say that the person who hasn't seen is almost living in a world of dreams psychologically. And therefore, the world of dreams is not related to the world of being awake.
That's right.
But the fellow who's awake can at least awaken perhaps the other fellow.
You are awake, I'm not.
Yes.
And if I'm, then your relationship with me is very clear. But I have no relationship with you. I cannot. I insist on division, and you don't.
Yes, in some way we have to say the consciousness of mankind has divided itself. It's all one, but it has divided itself
of course.
By thought, right?
That's what we've been through.
Yes, and that's why we're in this situation.
That's why all the problems that humanity has now, psychologically as well as in other ways, is the result of thought. And we are pursuing the same pattern of thought. And thought will never solve any of these problems. That's why that is the future of mankind, future of humanity, wonder if anybody is concerned with it. Or each person or each group is only concerned with its own survival.
Well, I think the first concern is almost always has been with survival, either the individual or the group. You see, that has been the history of mankind.
Therefore, perpetual wars.
Yes.
Perpetual insecurity.
Yes, but this is, as you said, the result of thought which makes the mistake of, on the basis of being incomplete, to identify the self, you know, with a group and so on.
You happen to listen to all this. You agree to all this. You see the truth of all this. Those in power will not even listen to you.
No.
They are creating more and more misery, more and more becoming dangerous. How do you then, what's the point of you and I agreeing, seeing something true? This is what people are asking. What's the point of you and I seeing something to be true? And what effect has it?
Well, it seems to me that if we think in terms of effects, we are bringing in time.
It's the wrong question.
Yeah, we bring in time. We are bringing in the very thing which is behind the trouble.
Trouble, yes.
That is, their first response would be, we quickly must get in and do something to change the course of events.
Therefore, form a society, foundation, organization, all the rest.
But you see, our mistake is that to do that, we must think about something, and that thought is incomplete, right? We don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And people have made theories about it, but they don't know.
No, but come down to it. If that's the wrong question, then as a human being, who is mankind, what is my responsibility?
Well, I think it's the same as...
Apart from effect and all that.
Yeah, we can't look toward effects, we see. But it's the same as with A and B, that A sees and B does not, right?
Yeah.
Now, suppose A sees something and most of the rest of mankind does not, right? Then it seems that, see, well, one could say mankind is in some way dreaming, asleep, you know, it's dreaming.
It's caught in an illusion.
Illusion, and the point is that to somehow, if somebody sees something, then his responsibility is to help wake that person, wake the others up, right? To get out of the illusion.
That's just it.
And when you put the puzzle pieces together, the world looks very, very different when you connect the dots. Because what the system wants to do right across society is get people to focus on dots, individual dots, a religion, family, job, football team, whatever.
So, a rich little man with white hair died. What has that got to do with the price of rice, right? And why is that woe to us? Because you people and 62 million other Americans are listening to me right now. Because less than 3% of you people read books. Because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Because the only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube is the gospel, the ultimate revelation. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. This tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people. And that's why woe is us that Edward George Ruddy died. Because this company is now in the hands of CCA, the Communication Corporation of America. There's a new chairman of the board, a man called Frank Hackett, sitting in Mr. Ruddy's office on the 20th floor. And when the 12th largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be peddled for truth on this network? So you listen to me. Listen to me. Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So if you want the truth, go to God. Go to your gurus. Go to yourselves. Because that's the only place you're ever going to find any real truth. But man, you're never going to get any truth from us. We'll tell you anything you want to hear. We lie like hell. We'll tell you that Kojak always gets the killer and that nobody ever gets cancer in Archie Bunker's house. And no matter how much trouble the hero is in, don't worry, just look at your watch. At the end of the hour, he's going to win. We'll tell you any shit you want to hear. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
There's nothing wrong with focus as long as you hold peripheral vision and you can see how your focus connects out into other things. That's not what the system wants. It wants that focus so you don't have peripheral vision. And as you're trying to go through the maze we call life, the control system has set up endless ways to divert us, confuse us, and to keep us from the understanding that would set us free. The elephant in the living room appears when you connect the dots. When you connect enough, the elephant it's so blatant. But when the dots are unconnected, there's no elephant there, because you can't see it. And that elephant in the living room is that there is a multi-level conspiracy, and it is multi-level, to enslave humanity in like a global concentration camp. The trick is to make sure the slaves don't realize they're slaves, so they don't do anything about their slavery.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matrix. Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Freedom on a level, like I say, that we can't even begin to imagine from the perception of awareness that we've had so far. We perceive just a fraction of what freedom is, even when we talk about freedom. And we can break out of this. We can break out of this maze, this vibrational prison that we've been encased in. But to do that, as I said at the start, we have to stop doing what has put us in there. And that is conforming to the world that we are told the world is. Stop being in the herd. Stop being in the box, because there is another way. And if we don't take another way, I'm not saying the other way, we live in all possibility, but if we don't take another way from the way we've taken this far, how can anything change? It can't. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Real simple. And we don't have to all be the same. You can look the other way. You don't have to be a faceless person in a faceless crowd. It's not compulsory. You can express your uniqueness. You don't have to do what everybody else does just because they do it and we're frightened of conforming. And sometimes the choice of not conforming can actually save us a lot of grief. And it will in the next few years. You don't have to swim with the tide. You can swim the other way. It's possible. You were born an original. Don't die a copy. But how many people do? Because they fear not being like everyone else is because of the comeback from those people. Truth does not change because it is or is not believed by the majority of the people. Everybody knows that, mate. Everyone knows that's rubbish. Well, I don't know it's rubbish. That's one less than everyone. We've made a start. As Gandhi said, even if you're in a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. And this is the stadium on which it all plays out, the human mind. You cannot control billions of people physically. You can in certain small areas, yes, with your tanks and your bloody tasers and all that rubbish, but you can't do it to 7 billion. You have to control the way they perceive themselves and the world, and therefore through that make them behave the way you want them to. So if we're going to go down this route of freedom, first of all, we need to free our minds from the programming of a lifetime. Free our minds from the belief that what we're programmed to believe in schools is the truth about anything. It's not there to enlighten us. It's there to program us with a certain perception of reality which we carry through our lives, so we will be good little slaves based on who we think we are and what we think the world is. Free our minds from the diversions and the nonsense and, hey honey, she's after the car, quick. And while we're doing that, over here, the world is being orchestrated. Not for our benefit either. Free our minds from the belief that the mainstream media is interested in telling the people the truth of what's going on in the world. It's there to do the opposite. It's to tell us the version of reality the control system wants us to believe, so we will respond and react in the right way. Free our minds from the fake change people that are being cracky. Is there a politician that's actually campaigning anymore that's not saying they stand for change? Change? Yes, I'll tell you what the change is. It's one guy claiming to be change controlled by the same force that controlled the previous guy. Free our minds from the fake, fraudulent, false flag terrorist events created by the same control system that then tells you how the world must change to save us from the terrorism that they had covertly created. Free our minds from the front men for this control system who are put up to frighten us into accepting changes in society, surveillance and control to save us from people who are front men for the very system that says, let me save you from him. Free our minds from the bullshit nonsense about human-caused global warming, which is nothing more than a way of introducing and justifying more and more controls and massive, massive increases in taxation, making fortunes for people like him. Free our minds from the idea that Big Pharma, the pharmaceutical industry, is in any way interested in human health. It's not about human health, it's about Big Pharma wealth and more. Free our minds from the four-letter word that controls the world, fear, that traps us in these vibrational boxes called fear. And free our minds, more than anything else, from the idea that we are Charlie Jones or Ethel Smith. We're just Joe Public. We've got no power. The choice is to become conscious, to realize that Ethel Smith is an experience, not who we are.
So what is the self? The form, the name, the form?
No.
Just a minute. Let me inquire. We're inquiring. The form, the body, the organism. The name. The name identifies itself with the body. Certain characteristics identifying itself with me. I'm strong, I'm weak, I've got good character, I'm not bad. So the characteristic is identified by thought as the me. The tendency identified by thought as the me. The experiences, the accumulated knowledge as identified by thought as the me. And the me is that which I possess. My property, my house, my furniture, my wife, my books. All that, the violence, the pleasure, the fear, the agonies, all that with the name, with the form, constitutes the self. So, what is the root of the self? Is the root of the self the acquired experiences? I'm inquiring, sir.
Yes, yes.
Acquired experiences. Is the self the root of, we are inquiring into the very root of it, not the mere expressions of it. Right, sir? Am I all right? I want to laugh a bit.
Yes. Yes, that is very important.
So, the whole process of identification, my house, my name, my possessions, what I will be, the success, the power, the position, the prestige, the identification process is the essence of the self. If there is no identification, is there the self?
And yet so many people are still saying, well, it looks all right to me. Looks all right to me. To have your head in the sand, you have to be on your knees. The two go together.
Why do we keep recreating the same reality? Why do we keep having the same relationships? Why do we keep getting the same jobs over and over again? In this infinite sea of potentials that exist around us, how come we keep recreating the same realities? Isn't it amazing that we have options and potentials that exist, but we're unaware of them? Is it possible that we're so conditioned to our daily lives, so conditioned to the way we create our lives, that we buy the idea that we have no control at all? We've been conditioned to believe that the external world is more real than the internal world. This new model of science does just the opposite. It says what's happening within us will create what's happening outside of us.
I wish it were different. I wish things were different. Well, we all do, but they're not. They are as they are, and I find myself saying this all the time now. It is what it is. And if you accept what it is, you can change what it is. If you're in denial of it, you're not going to change it because you're kidding yourself it doesn't exist. This control system is coming in. It's coming in fast at the moment. And we have to get it from talking about it to doing something about it. And it's crept up on us step by step. While we're watching the game shows and celebrity world and sport and stuff. Nothing wrong with any of those things. But if you're there and you've not got the peripheral vision, they will keep you from seeing what's going on. And now the future is here. It's not sometime never. The future is here. And we've got to go from that to that pretty damn quick. And we can and we will. In many, many ways. As Martin Luther King said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Establishment science, education, media, that's what it does. I mean, have you seen these politicians in Britain now? You've got Clegg in the Liberal Party, Liberal Democrats. You've got Cameron in the Conservatives. You're going to probably have one of the Miliband's, maybe David Miliband, leader of the other major party, and they're all standing on the same sodding postage stamp, all three of them. Same background, same basic perception of the world and politics, and that's exactly the same with science, education, and media. They all stand on this same postage stamp, and anyone wants to step off it and explore in other areas, stop him! Stop him! Ridicule, condemnation, stop his funding. And people say, well, if what you're saying is true, science would tell us. Yeah, okay. Like the media would tell us, right? Yeah, okay. What the control system doesn't want us to know is that this reality, in terms of its physicality, the one we think we're experiencing now, is an illusion. There is no physicality. There is no out there. Everything I'm looking at now out there is going on in here. I'll come to how that works. It is so simple. As the great American comedian Bill Hicks said, great, great man. All matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. We're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. And that's the control system's bottom line, manipulating our imagination of self. As Einstein said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one.
Scientific experiments have shown that if we take a person and hook their brains up to certain PET scans or computer technology and ask them to look at a certain object, and they watch certain areas of the brain light up, and then they've asked them to close their eyes and now imagine that same object. And when they imagine that same object, it produced the same areas of the brain to light up as if they were actually visually looking at it. So it caused scientists to back up and ask this question. So who sees then? Does the brain see, or do the eyes see? And what is reality? Is reality what we're seeing with our brain, or is reality what we're seeing with our eyes? And the truth is that the brain does not know the difference between what it sees in its environment and what it remembers, because the same specific neural nets are then firing. So then it asks the question, what is reality? The brain processes 400 billion bits of information a second, but we're only aware of 2,000 of those. But our awareness of those 2,000 bits of information are just about the environment, our body, and about time.
We're living in a world where all we see is the tip of the iceberg.
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
As far as whether or not we're just living in a big holodeck or not, it's a question that we don't necessarily have a good answer to. I think this is a big philosophical problem that we have to deal with in terms of what science can say about our world, because we are always the observer in science. So we are still always constrained by what is ultimately coming into the human brain that allows us to see and perceive the things that we do. So it is conceivable that all of this really is just a great illusion that we have no way of really getting outside of to see what is really out there.
Your brain doesn't know the difference between what's taking place out there and what's taking place in here.
There is no out there, independent of what's going on in here.
And the reason it's persistent is because we live in a virtual reality universe. A fantastically expanded, advanced version of a gigantic computer game. And the analogies go one after the other. Today, it's much easier to talk about reality because technology is starting to mirror the very reality that we're experiencing. It's getting closer and closer to real, and the projection is that not too long from now, they will have computer games which you could hardly tell the difference between that and this. We're having training simulations and flying simulations. They're in some hospitals using virtual reality images to show patients when their burns are being treated, and they show them pictures, very cold images, and the brain decodes that and cools the skin down. And when you look at these advanced virtual reality technologies, what are they doing? They're just hijacking the way the five senses work anyway. They're using the eyes, they're using through these gloves, the sense of touch and all the rest of it. And they are feeding information, digital information, to the brain and tricking it to believe that something's going on which is not. And that's how the control system works. And we have what I call the body computer, the biological body computer. Biological, by that I mean it has the ability not just to react to data, but to assess that data and make decisions on it, which is what the immune system is doing all now as we speak. I'm not standing here, you're not sitting there saying, okay, problem with the right leg, go down there a bit on the left. No, it's just doing it because it's thinking. It's a biological computer system. By the way, this image here was taken the split second that someone told this guy that Barack Obama had won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's how I reacted anyway. And the base foundation of this virtual reality is actually waveform, vibrating energy. And within waveforms, as scientists will tell you, fantastic amounts of information can be stored. And that's what the base information construct of this reality is. It's information in wave form. And what I'm going to call that through the day is the metaphysical universe. When I talk about the metaphysical universe, I mean the waveform level of this universe before it becomes this. What happens is the waveform information construct is decoded through the body computer into the world that we think we are experiencing. It's all going on in here. And it's like, as I'll come to in a second, it's almost a mirror, though much more advanced, of the wireless internet, where you can get a computer and you can pull the wireless internet, the World Wide Web, a whole collective reality out of the unseen to appear on a screen anywhere in the world. And so as we decode vibrational information through to electrical information, which is sent to the brain, and the brain decodes that into the world that we think we are experiencing. This is the metaphysical universe. Through the body computer, it becomes the world that we experience as outside of us. The five senses, which of course, as I say, virtual reality computer games lock into, that's how they work, they change vibrational information into electrical information, which goes to the brain to be decoded into what is holographic information. I'll come to that. The five senses are a decoding system. The most obvious one, of course, is sound. That's a vibration, comes to the ear, message to the brain, brain hears the sound. There is no sound until we've decoded it as so. Sound is just a vibration until we've decoded it. Sound exists in here. Same with taste. Electrical signals to the brain decodes it. This is how you can, through stage hypnotists, etc., get someone to eat a potato but taste an apple. Because you implant the belief here that it's an apple, and so the electrical signal with the potato code goes there, and it doesn't read it like that, it reads it as an apple. Even on that basic level, think of the potential for manipulating the way we see reality individually and collectively. And different parts of the brain, like with smell, are specifically there in the body computer to decode those senses. Same with touch. Exactly the same. Even movement. There is no movement until we've decoded that movement. There are conditions of the brain, which some people have, where they don't decode movement. So often they don't even see it. They'll see a car in the distance, and next thing, whoa, it's gone. Nothing in the middle. They see someone pouring a cup of tea, and all they see is a static arc of tea. Stage hypnotists are playing with this system all the time, like I say. And there are some other hypnotists I made earlier. These don't know they're hypnotists, most of them anyway, but that's what they're doing. They are all the time giving us a sense of reality, a belief in what is real, and if the brain takes on that belief system, it then starts reading reality in line with that belief, and it becomes a self-fulfilling reality. So we live in the equivalent, as I'll keep saying, a very, very advanced equivalent of the holographic internet, the World Wide Web. If you say to people, tell me about the internet, they say, yeah, well, it's graphics and websites and words and colors and the pictures. Yes, it is. But the only place that exists in that form, the internet, is on the screen. Everywhere else, it's electrical circuits, etc., etc. You say, tell me about television. They'll say, well, it's moving pictures on a screen. Yes, it is. But the only place that television exists in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it's electrical circuits and, in some cases still, many cases still, broadcast frequencies. And we live in what I call the cosmic internet, where information in the energy around us, I'll come to where it comes from in a minute, is then pulled out of the unseen. Just as these guys sitting out in the open, no wires, no connections, they are pulling the unseen out onto the computer screen. And if you think of it, because people say, well, if you're creating your own reality in your head and all that stuff, why do we all see the same stage? Why do we all see the same car? Well, when you log on the internet in South Africa or Australia or London or America or anywhere, apart from places like China, you log on to the very same collective reality as everywhere else, everywhere in the world. You might choose to go to this website, and if you go to this website, the guy in South Africa will be could go to the same website that you're on and see the same thing, because it's a collective reality. What happens is that we then decide, do we like this website? What do we think of it? Do I want to go there or do I want to go there? That's how we put our individual spin on it. It's the same when you look out the window and you see the same car going past. But I might like the car, someone else might not like the car. But it's the same collective reality. And the body computer is pulling this reality out of the unseen, just like those laptops. And it's information decoding information. Just as you put a computer disk in a computer, it's information. The information encoded in the computer then reads the information on the disk. That's what we're doing. And that way, we manifest this apparently out there reality. We too, the so-called human body, is energetic, non-physical in its base form. But when it comes through the decoding system, it becomes the world that we think we're experiencing outside of us. It seems to be outside of us. I'll grant you, my God, I look out here, it looks to be outside of me. But it's inside of us. We are creating it through the decoding system in our heads, which the body computer then is decoding into this collective reality. And just like on the internet, where you can see information and receive it, but you can also post information, so we're interacting with this virtual reality universe and changing it subtly as we put our unique spin on things. And we're creating that world that I keep talking about. Now, some scientists over the years have postulated that this physical world only exists when it's observed. I agree. Why? Because of this. When you put a computer disk into a computer, it does not read all the information on the disk at the same time. It reads that part that it is observing, whatever that laser's hitting at the time. All the other stuff is still in information form. It's not been transferred to the screen as pictures, etc. And we do the same. When we observe, decode, then we bring it into this reality. But without that, this is just the base vibrational metaphysical universe, which is the basis of all of it. Then no light gets in the brain. So how do we see light? How can I look at that light and see it? No light ever gets in the brain because the brain's decoding information into that light. So when you see things like in the Matrix movies, those lines like, there is no spoon. It is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself. Exactly. Because the only place the spoon exists in physical form is in here. And you bend it by bending the way you decode reality. Miracles are simply overcoming the programming of what's possible and not possible. You know, we of course programmed to believe that when you walk through fire, you get burned. And if you walk through fire or hot coals with that belief, that decoding state, you'll burn your bloody feet. But as so many people have shown, if you can go into another state of consciousness and override that, you can walk across hot coals and not feel a thing. Why? Because an illusion cannot burn an illusion unless you believe it can.
Let me show you some examples. Let me share some examples of miracles. You've all heard these stories before. You've heard stories of miracles. This is a story of a woman who lifted a car 20 times her body weight to free a person who was trapped underneath the car in an accident. You've heard stories like this. She freed this person. She went to the hospital with this person. She waited in the waiting room. The doctor came out and said, "This man will live because you lifted the car and saved his life." And when she heard the words that described what she did, she passed out. Unconscious. Because she had done something that even she couldn't believe. She wasn't thinking about it. All she said, "I just knew I had to get him free, and there was no one else around at the time." How many in this room are fire walkers? Fire walkers. Do you walk the fire pit? Okay, a few. On June 15th, 2005, Amanda Dennison, Alberta, Canada, entered the book of world records for the longest fire walk. Look at this walk. She crossed this pit, 220 feet long. I don't know how many meters that is. Approximately? Okay, it's a big fire pit, big pit. Averaging 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. She crossed this uninjured. This is a picture of Amanda walking through the coals. This is a picture of Amanda after the walk. And the question, she has no injuries. The question is why? Why no injuries? It's because of her beliefs. The woman lifted the car 20 times her body weight because of her beliefs. Amanda walked through the fire because of her beliefs. These are examples we see every day of a power within us. But they're rare examples. What if they become everyday examples?
There are no miracles. There's just understanding how to manifest all possibility. And that understanding comes from the fact that we acknowledge, we understand that we are consciousness. Disembodied, no form awareness having an experience. Like a Central American shaman said, we are perceivers, we are awareness, we are not objects, we have no solidity. We, or rather our reason, forget this, and thus we entrap the totality of ourselves in a vicious circle from which we rarely emerge in our lifetime. And that vicious circle is what the control system wants to keep us in, because then we're controllable. We understand who we really are, what we really are. It's impossible to control by a bunch of control freaks. The body is the way our awareness experiences this reality. If I want to interact with this reality, which is a frequency range, I have to have an outer shell, we all do, that vibrates within this frequency range, because our consciousness is vibrating much too quickly. It's like radio 1 trying to make connection to radio 2. They're on different wavelengths. It's never going to happen. So we take on this outer projection we call a body, and therefore I can pick this up and interact with this reality. What the control system wants us to do is to believe that that projection, that vehicle to experience this reality, is who we are, because then we go from, I am all that is, has been, and ever will be, I'm Charlie Smith, I'm Ethel Jones, I've got no power.
And imagine, in whatever way, shape, or form works for your imagination, imagine your brain and see all the little neurological pathways. You can see them in any way, shape, or form you wish. You may see them as wiring. You may see them as fluid. You may see them as crystals. You may see them as a drawing. You may see them as a pattern of any kind of configuration whatsoever, but just know that that is representative of the idea of the pathways of your brain. And the pathways, like a computer program in a sense, are representative of different ideas, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, definitions. This is, in a sense, a basic representation of the personality mask, the artificial personality construct that you use to explore the experience of physical reality. It is not really fundamentally who you are as a being, as a consciousness. It is a filtering system. Just in the same way that if you go diving in the sea, you bring along a mask or a snorkel or a diving tank, the idea of the neurological pathways of the brain, the antenna that receives the downloads from a higher mind, from non-physical reality, that creates the template of your physical experience, is simply such an artificial device to allow you to dive down into the experience vibrationally of physical reality and explore around for a while.
the whole bottom line of it. We say I'm going on the internet. We don't go on the internet. The computer goes on the internet. And we observe the internet through the computer. And our mind-body is the vehicle to experience this reality. That goes on the internet. Consciousness, the real us, observes, just like the World Wide Web, observes the internet through that vehicle. And like I say, the idea is to get us to think that we're that and not that. This guy, Ramana Maharshi, a man who lived in India and meditated for most of his life on a mountain in India. I've actually been there. Nice place. He said, mind is consciousness which is put on limitations. You are originally unlimited and perfect. Later you take on limitations and become the mind.
And it's like if everything is embedded into each other to infinity, is how you get boundary condition. How does things differentiate from each other? This has been a big problem. It's a chasm in our understanding. How does infinity and finite system interact? Typically we think they don't. And that has shown up in our physics really strongly. So now we have a theory for like big stuff, Einstein field equations, that predicts continuums towards singularity, continuums towards infinity, and we have a theory for the small stuff, for the atoms and the subatomic particles we call quantum theory, and quantum theory predicts bounded linear finite states. So the two don't agree. And so since then we have this thing, and so we have this chasm between the two. Einstein tried to put it together, but he couldn't. And, you know, the problem is that when you look out there, big things are made out of small things. So obviously, those physics must match, right? Well, the chasm is much deeper than that. The chasm between the understanding of infinity and bounded state shows up in our society everywhere. I'll give you an example. Spiritual people tend everywhere. I'll give you an example. Spiritual people tend to think in terms of infinity, that like this infinite potential, you know, that all things have infinity within them and all this. And the scientific community tends to think in bounded, closed systems of finite, you know, rational concepts. And so the two don't agree, typically. The chasm even goes deeper. I think the deepest of that chasm is the difference between female and male. Women typically think in terms of continuum, in terms of curvature to infinity, like infinite possibility. Everything is okay, honey, right? And man thinks, in general, have a tendency to think in bounded state, you know, finite, highly logical systems. And the two can, in some cases, not agree. Statistics on divorce can support that statement, right? And so, but how do you solve it? I mean, there must be a solution, because men and women are here, because scientists and spiritual people are here, because large things are made out of small things. How do you connect infinities and finite systems? And I started to think about it at that age. By the age of 11, I was kind of despondent because, you know, I wasn't fitting in so well in society, and so I was not so happy, and I was actually pretty well ready to exit stage left, you know. And I met, luckily, a master of meditation that was not much older than me. I think he was like 15 or 16. And he taught me how to meditate. And when he taught me how to meditate, I learned that you can turn your senses from the outside to the inside, and you can go towards the center, and you know, there's a whole world there. And as I thought about that, I thought, maybe the solution between infinities and finite system is that there's stuff going in and that there's stuff going out, and the two meet and create boundary conditions that we think are finite boundaries. And so I start to extrapolate on that, and later on I realized that there is a simple geometric solution to the riddle. So in a simple geometric solution here, I'm going to prove to you that infinities and finite system are absolutely related. Actually, one cannot exist without the other. And so we'll make a boundary. We'll call it a finite boundary. This is a circle. And it encloses a certain volume, right? It could be a sphere in the space. So don't reduce it necessarily to a circle. And then inside it, we're going to put an equilateral triangle. Now, that triangle in a sphere could be a tetrahedron. Everybody knows what a tetrahedron is? It's one of these, right? And we can polarize that tetrahedron because the universe has spin. Things spins in the universe, and when they spin, there's polarity. So it's okay, you can polarize it. So you can polarize the triangle. And interestingly, right away, you got an ancient symbol that you can find in many, many different cultures all around the world, although it's best known by the Jewish culture as the Star of David or the Star of Zion. Well, if you look carefully, you find that as soon as I polarized the first tetrahedron, I created new boundaries that have the exact same geometry that I started with. Except these boundaries are one step smaller, right? They're one gradient or one iteration smaller. Well, what's important to remember here that each of these boundaries define a very specific center, right? Like this boundary here, this is its center, and this is its center, and all of the centers are all different from all other centers. That means that each of the boundary, although they are part of a similar geometry that is interactive with each other, meaning one cannot exist without the other ones, they all have their own very specific coordinates in space-time, and they observe the rest of the fractal structure from its own very specific point of view that no other boundary in the system has. You all following this? It's an important point. Now, you can polarize those, and you'll get smaller boundaries again. And again, each one is a very individual boundary. And you polarize those, you get smaller ones, and you can go to infinity doing that. So if I had this program running on my computer, it could keep zooming in and making more boundary and zooming in and making more boundaries, and it would go to infinity. Like, as long as the computer was running, it would keep going. However, I would never, ever, ever, ever escape or exceed the first boundary I've made for myself. So within the context of a finite space, I've embedded infinite amount of information, infinite amount of divisions. That means that if this is true, and if it's geometrically true, and if it's mathematically true, then it most likely is true, you could take the boundary of any of your atoms, or the boundary of your cells, and divide them and divide them and divide it to infinity, meaning that you have an infinite amount of information, an infinite amount of divisions within yourself. So all of a sudden, you're starting to have a mechanical and mathematical understanding of the infinite nature of your existence. It's no longer just a metaphysical concept. It's no longer a belief or a dogma. It's actually a mathematical equation. Does that make sense to you? So this is crucial, because without it, You're still in dogma.
You see here a blow-up into a particular point of the Mandelbrot set. This blow-up represents fantastic amount of computation, hours and hours and hours on a supercomputer. At a large scale, the Mandelbrot set looks reasonably simple, but the closer you look at it, the more elaborate and complicated it becomes. Here you can already start seeing a serpentine shape on the tips of the decorations. At the very center of this serpentine shape is a shape that you will recognize again. Now the wiggle that we are concentrating on is clearly in view. And in fact, the point at the center of this wiggle that we are really looking for is beginning to come in focus. Now there is a black dot. Keep your eye on that black dot. It will grow on you. Now the shape is becoming recognizable. There's clearly a little Mandelbrot set there in the center. But this Mandelbrot set comes with a whole pattern of decorations around it of great beauty, and which belongs to that copy of the Mandelbrot set and to absolutely no other.
And what it does, and I keep saying the control system is structured exactly to do this, it puts us in a false identity. One that doesn't think all possibility, it thinks limitation, I can't, that's not possible. Mainstream science has sussed most of this, but doesn't realize it as, because all the disciplines don't talk to each other. When you connect the dots, you realize they've already established that this is an illusion. But that doesn't go down well because it's too close to the truth. And how I experienced that state beyond this world, beyond vibration, was as stillness and silence. And that's what all possibility is, the stillness and the silence. There was a great line that voice said to me when it was explaining the nature of reality. It said, if it vibrates, it's illusion. If it vibrates, it's illusion, because our core level is stillness and silence. I experienced that. Amazing feeling. There are no negative emotions, there's no fear, there's no worry about not making the rent and all this stuff. They've all gone in that realm. And people think of nothing. All that is, has been, whatever can be. That's all potential, all knowing. And everywhere and nowhere. People think that's a paradox. You can't be everywhere and nowhere, but you can in all possibility. In all possibility, everything is possible. So everywhere is nowhere. Nowhere is everywhere. Everything and nothing. Again, not a paradox. All possibility is everything and nothing. And as I was saying, we think of nothing as nothing's there. There is nothing. But within the nothing, within the silence, is everything. Within the silence, for instance, is all possibility. And then when I start talking, I have pulled one possibility out of all possibility, which is manifest as vibration, my voice. And then I stop. It goes back into all possibility. We don't think that this building is defined by the nothing. We think it's defined by the something. But the something is only there, and this building is only in its form because of the no thing, apparently no thing, in between what we perceive as the something. The silence this is why when people are in silence, they go somewhere else. And so many people are frightened of the silence. Get in the car, whack the record on, get in home, put the telly on, noise, holds you in 5 sense reality. When people go into the silence, that's when they get their insights, because they're accessing other levels of themselves beyond the 5 senses. So out of the no thing comes the realm of form. This is something called cymatics. If you go on the internet, you can see it, videos of it, like YouTube. What they do is they put particles on a metal plate and they play sound across it. And it's incredible. It just forms into these amazing geometrical shapes just because of the sound. And when the sound stops, boom, it all goes back to all over the place. And then the sound changes and another form comes in. And these worlds of form, frequencies, vibrating frequencies, are created in this way, out of all possibility. And there are endless, infinite realms with different so-called laws of physics, different challenges, different experiences, all vibrating at different speeds and therefore able to share the same space. All of these different realms are sharing the same space that I'm sharing now, just as all the radio and television stations broadcasting to this city are sharing the space that I'm sharing now, and the space that they're sharing with each other. So we live in a frequency range, and that frequency range is dictated by the range of frequencies that our body computers can decode. And it is extraordinarily tiny. We're virtually blind in terms of what exists. The vast majority of this universe is what scientists call dark energy or dark matter. And they call it dark not because it's pitch black, but because we cannot decode it. Therefore, it is not in our realm of experience. We have to work it out by its impact on things that we can see. And the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what is projected to exist in this universe. And visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can decode, is a fraction of the 0.005%. So this is it. Visible light. This is our world. And we look out and we think we can see everything. But we can't. We can see what we can decode. And therefore, we operate within a dimension, we might call it, and it's penetrated by other dimensions. But we can't. We can see what we can decode. And therefore, we operate within a dimension, we might call it, and it's penetrated by other dimensions, which allows those other dimensions to interact with ours, which I'm going to get to in the second section, because that is fundamental to the control system. What we're doing is we are putting our focus of attention into this reality through the body computer, and therefore this seems to be the only world that exists. But the space we're occupying is teeming with life of endless varieties. So if we come into this world of mind and we hold a connection to consciousness, we are in this world physically and we can experience this. We're going to go to the pub, yeah, let's have a beer with you, yeah. But we're not of this world in terms of the point of observation.
We know what an observer does from a point of view of quantum physics, but we don't know who or what the observer actually is. Doesn't mean we haven't tried to find an answer. We've looked. We've gone inside of your head. We've gone into every orifice you have to find something called an observer, and there's nobody home. There's nobody in the brain. There's nobody in the cortical regions of the brain. There's nobody in the subcortical regions or the limbic regions of the brain. There's nobody there called an observer. And yet we all had this experience of being something called an observer, observing the world out there.
Who are we? And this is the great mystery and the controversy in the language of science. Are we simply observers, passive observers in this universe, watching the world go by, or are we powerful creators? As our most cherished religious and spiritual traditions have always said, are we actually powerful creators that have forgotten how to use our power? Well, this is the great question that has been asked by scientists for 400 years. When I was in school in the 1970s, 1960s, I was taught that the universe began a long time ago and that we have come along relatively recently and that we are essentially powerless specks of dust in the universe. And after we are gone, the universe will never know that we were here. That's what I was taught when I was in school. Does that sound familiar to you? That's one way of thinking. There is another way of thinking that says something very different. It says the universe began a long time ago. We have come along relatively recently. However, we are powerful creators that are changing our world and changing the universe as we live our lives. And this is the controversy of the scientists. Okay. A colleague of Albert Einstein was alive during his time and is still alive today. His name is Professor John Wheeler, Princeton University physicist. He's still with us today. John Wheeler says completely the opposite. They studied in the same time. They had the same information, the same books, the same data, and they had very different opinions. Look at what John Wheeler says. John Wheeler says we could not even imagine a universe that did not contain us because, he says, it is the act of us observing the universe that makes the universe as it is. He said it is the act of us observing the world around us. He said that we're part of a universe that is not finished yet. John Wheeler says the universe is incomplete. He says that we are tiny specks, tiny patches of the universe looking at itself and building itself in what he calls a participatory universe. Participatory. I like that word. It means that we are not controlling the universe. We are not imposing our will upon the universe. We are participating, co-creating. Does that mean anything to you when you see this? What John Wheeler is saying. This is a scientist saying that consciousness is creating our physical universe. The question is, if feeling and consciousness is creating, what is it that we feel? What do we believe about our world? The new discoveries suggest that the power to change our bodies and to change our world is based in what we call belief. Belief. Our belief of what is real. We live our lives based in what we believe about our world. Would you agree with that? We live our lives based on what we believe about, sure, about ourselves, our world, one another, our limitations, our capabilities. I was trained as a scientist. When I began to understand that we live our lives based upon our beliefs, my question is, where do those beliefs come from? And what I found is that those beliefs come from what other people tell us. The beliefs come from what history tells us, what science tells us, what religion tells us, what our culture, what our family, our friends tell us. That's where our beliefs come from. Would you agree with that? So let me ask a question. What if they're wrong? What if they're wrong? What if you and I are living our lives in the beliefs of other people who are incorrect? What does that mean for us? How powerful do you think a belief really is? How powerful, truly? There's an author. His name was Neville in the early 20th century. He wrote a book called The Power of Awareness, a beautiful book. And what Neville said was this. He said that our power of belief is a power, an infinite power against which no earthly force is of the slightest significance. Our power of belief is an infinite power against which no earthly force is of the slightest significance. Do you believe that you have a power within you against which no earthly force is of the slightest significance? Is that possible? Do you believe that?
We are in this world, but we're observing it from here. We can see things here that this can't see. And that's why the control system has to keep us here. And a structured society to make that happen. To keep us in bewilderment by being only able to decode and experience reality through the five senses. And once you are in the five senses, and you're not getting inspiration, insight, intuitive knowing from higher levels of your consciousness, where do you look to get a fix on who you are, where you are, and the world you're living in? There. And who controls that? The control system that controls the media, politics, education, science. The idea is isolate us in the five senses, isolate us in body-mind, and then program the body-mind to see the world that suits the control system. Time and space are just information within the metaphysical universe fabric, the vibrational fabric, which we then decode into what appears to be time and space. There is no time and space. When you put a disk in a computer, it's got information on it. You put it in the computer reads it. On the screen, you see time and space, or what appears to be time and space. But all it is information on the disk being read by the computer and being put on the screen. That's what we are doing all the time. Time's an illusion. And my goodness me, if we fall for that, then we totally get encompassed by time, that time exists. You can say it's 1 o'clock, I've got to meet someone at 1 o'clock, so you're there at the same time and synchronize that, but all along you know that it's just a construct. It's not part of you this time. Because no time is where consciousness operates. And if we operate completely connected to time, then by that very nature we're going to disconnect from consciousness, which is on another level of perception. Our time is just crazy. You cross an invisible line in the ocean, you go into tomorrow, you go the other way, you go into yesterday. There is only the now. That's all there is. People say, no, there's the past and there's the future. Well, okay. When you think of the future, where are you? You're in the now. When you think of the past, memories, where are you? You're in the now. These are constructs. These are perceptions. They're not real. Only thing that's real is now. Everything happens in the now. And the only moment we can change anything is in the now. Like a disc, like a DVD. What you've seen in the film is your past, as you perceive the past. What you're looking at in the film at that moment you perceive as the present, and what you've yet to see in the film you perceive as the future. Yet all that information exists on that disc at the same time. And the body computer, biological computer, has the ability to think and assess for itself, ticks every box when you go through it. The reason they're now talking about connecting the brain to desktop computers is because they are connecting two computers. One far more, infinitely more advanced, yes, but two computers. That's how it's possible. When the computer won't work, won't turn on, won't process, we say the computer's dead. You drop a computer from a top floor, it will smash and it will be dead. You drop a human computer, it will smash and be dead. Because that's all that happens at death. The computer dies. We don't bloody die. There is no death. We're consciousness, infinite consciousness. The computer goes into sleep mode just to tick over. We go into sleep mode just to tick over. We have antivirus technology in computers to seek out the viruses that are a danger to the computer's systems and what you might call health. We have a phenomenal antivirus system we call the human immune system, which does exactly the same. And when you have a virus system and a new virus comes up, they have to update it because it can't work out how to stop it, because it's not been programmed to. This is updated by reacting and then integrating that so that the next time that comes, it can deal with it. The brain is the central processing unit of the computer, which in a desktop is a microchip. It's the main processor of information. The DNA is the hard drive, and it's not just the DNA we see physically, because even DNA is just the decoded version of an energy field. We have an energy counterpart which we call the human aura.
Let's do another one. Second experiment. This is performed by Russian scientist Vladimir Poponin. 1992. Vladimir Poponin took a glass tube. He'd removed all of the air from inside the tube, creating what we call a vacuum, implying that the tube is empty. But it's not empty. We know there is something in that tube, and you are now experts at what is in the tube, because what is in the tube are photons, little particles of light. Photons are in that tube. And the scientists measured them to see where the photons are. Are they sticking to the sides? Are they piled up on the bottom? Where are the photons? Here's what they found, the first part of this experiment. They found when they measured them that they were completely random, that the photons were everywhere, random. No surprise. Everything is good. Sorry. Okay, this is the first part of the experiment. Everybody is happy so far. Science is good so far. Now, look at what they did. They took some human DNA and they put human DNA into the photons, and they asked this question. This is a powerful question, my friends. They asked the question, what effect does human DNA have on the photons? But what they're really asking is, what effect does the stuff that your body is made of have on the stuff this world is made of? That is a powerful question. Does that make sense? Did that translate okay? They're asking, what effect does the stuff of the human body, what effect do we have on our physical world? In conventional science, there is nothing that allows for the effect. In conventional science, we were taught to believe that there is no effect. But that's not what these experiments show. Watch this. They put human DNA in with the photons, and the photons aligned themselves with the DNA. The photons were physically changed in their arrangement. The photons moved in the presence of the DNA. The stuff our world is made of changed in the presence of the stuff our bodies are made of. This is a powerful experiment. It's the first time it's been shown in the laboratory that your body is changing your world. Then they said, what happens if we take the DNA out? What happens to the photons? Well, what happened, they were not prepared for. Because when they took the photons out, when they took the DNA out, the photons acted like the DNA was still there. As if they were still connected. As if they were still connected. The question is why? There's nothing that explains this in traditional science, but in the new science, there is. This is called the DNA phantom effect. If you would like to Google this on your computer, you can research this for yourself. And all of these references are on my website, so you don't have to write the reference down. Experiment number 2, all that I'm showing is that DNA affects our physical world. The stuff that you're made of affects your physical world.